Here we are. We are live. This is the very first ever paid live stream, and that's because it's just out of the ordinary, and it's about the Bishop Ruch verdict that came down. And so I thought this would be a good time to just narrow the scope, as it were. uh, we just both finished reading the 70 pages, and I can't see very well. I'm wearing my wrong glasses, and this would normally be when I was about to post. So, not gonna write anything for today, but this later this afternoon, I will write probably about this for tomorrow. So I'm sorry that there's no post going up, but I can't collect my thoughts uh, that quickly after such a voluminous document um, appearing late last night, which I don't want to complain, but I was very sad that this did not appear until just about 6 p.m. because I had the whole afternoon clear and I could have read it all in one go. So that's just a little complaint on my part. I would have loved it if they had put it out earlier in the day, but I'm not in charge of anything. So let me take it up here. So we thought you've
And we
read
had a
it as
bench
well,
meeting
right?
we had a bench meeting at like 6:30, so we had no time to read it until like late. So
Right. We had the best meeting at 6:30. So I was trying to pick away at it during vestry, but it wasn't quite the same. So I can't find it on my computer. I did see that we are now going to be allowed to live stream from a computer, but that's going to take me a little while to figure out. So eventually I'll probably try to move off the phone platform and onto the computer one. But anyway, uh, I'm scrolling looking for the actual document. I think we will just react to it, and maybe we will react to some of the reaction that's going on online, um, because there is a lot of uh, deep grief going on there as well. And so,
I think one interesting thing is that I but this has been going on for 5 years, right? So in that 5 years, people have fastened on to one narrative or the other, and it's because they've had 5 years to let it become true, right, in their mind. So whichever way this went, people were going to be outraged because they know. I mean, everyone thinks they know
yeah,
the case, and I found the ruling is 71 pages, which is very very long. So, I mean, I really think people should really read it carefully um, before reacting. But
it's repetitive. Like I think you don't have to read all the sections as carefully, because they repeat
right,
things. But there are sections that are like I read Richard Reeves' um, AI summary last night, which was actually good. Having now read the whole thing, the AI didn't lie, so that's good. But there are sections of the actual ruling that are so kind of eye popping that it's worth going through and skimming a good amount and then reading some of it more carefully.
yeah. Especially include. I mean, I just a methodological suggestion. Go read the concluding findings first, and then go back up and read the reasoning. So you'll know where it's headed, and that's an easy way. It's a better way of doing it, so you don't get confused. Um, but like, so I think it was. I think that the length of it is burdensome, but I think it was important to lay out some of the ways that uh, social media pressure, 1882, popular assumptions, the need for some bishops to appear to be listening to the popular assumptions. That all came out very clearly in the retelling, and I was personally thankful that the court was able to make a distinction between that pressure and facts, like because of what seemed to be happening. I was kind of worried about this. What seemed to be happening over the last 5 years is that the pressure groups, A2 in particular, were creating facts um, by accusation that I was afraid were going to just assumed to be facts, and they weren't. The court did a good job of investigating everything, I think. Um, are you making? Is your sound working?
I muted myself because it's so
Oh,
heavy. Sorry. Let me say that again. I I appreciated that they took the time to lay out the history of the case itself. So maybe that violates some legal norm, but I think it was necessary for us all to relive the last 5 years. And I really appreciated the history of the diocese itself because I had bits and pieces of that, but I thought that they framed that up really well. Of course, it was slanted in a particular direction. If you were really angry with the diocese of the Upper Midwest, am I saying it right? Uh, you wouldn't appreciate their narrative, but I found it very helpful, and I think we were all owed an explanation of how this went down, and not just like, okay, he's not guilty. Here's one page of the charges. I saw people
that's what I
saying,
was afraid was going to happen. I was afraid they were just
yeah,
going to just the verdict without any explanation. So I'm glad that they did the 71 pages.
right. And you can read and figure out kind of for yourself what, you know, from your own, but you can see the court's inclinations. I don't want to use the word bias as you read the long 71 pages, uh, but it's not nefarious. It's not like they are hiding anything actually either. They're very upfront about their methodology, what they were doing, why they were doing it that way. And so we have something substantial to disagree about if indeed any of us disagree. And not being a lawyer person, I didn't find anything disagreeable with about their methodology. But
I mean, I've read online some lawyers saying, "Well, this doesn't read like a court document." But I've also read another lawyer, Chad, where's his last name, Graham, saying it is. It's like this is the document. The document really reflects how does he put it uh, the thread of the assumption of innocence runs through the whole thing, which is good because that's exactly um, what a lot of these pressure groups would like us to dispense with. And when a charge is made, the charge must be believed, and then the only thing to be adjudicated are the consequences for the person who's been charged. It's a the that is what the 1882 was wanted, and it's a very Jacobin kind of way of looking at justice. So I was so glad the court did not take that tack. Um,
I I I mean I it's very what's the word where your blood pressure lowers after a long period of it being slightly too high and you
yeah,
didn't know that that's what it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
I think that the ACNA and indeed many church situations of every denomination have been a pressure cooker for the last 5 years. So the other thing that was really, really fascinating was to see how things were in 2019 and then what went down in 2020.
Yeah, because I
I
mean,
think every congregation
right.
in every denomination felt this pressure cooker building up. And that, that if we litigate anything now, let us litigate the last 5 years in a general sense, as well as in the particulars of what happened to Bishop Ruch, because he's a person now that we can look at to see what happened to everyone in this moment with between 2020 and 2023, I think is kind of the time frame, and it shows up in the court documents over and over.
Well, the diocese was growing. I mean, the court explains how the diocese is growing. It also had, which is hard if you're a bishop, keeping track of what's happening in your diocese when your diocese is growing so rapidly. And on top of that, the greenhouse movement, which is not really technically, I guess, under his jurisdiction. I'm not sure how that worked. Um, uh, but the court kind of says he was doing his best to keep abreast of the situation. Um, but before the situation broke out, the diocese was not um, abnormal in its use of safeguarding procedures, or um, there seemed to be adequate concern about that, at least for the time, right? I mean, now 5 years later, after the height of the Me Too movement, I mean, there's a lot more structure for and work that dioceses and bishops can take advantage of. But at the time, it was just started. This stuff was just starting out. So I guess the court looked like it compared what Bishop Ruch, how Bishop Ruch acted before, during, and after, compared to how a bishop should be expected to act under those circumstances, and found that he did what you would expect a bishop to do. Um, he didn't. Uh, he did not. One of the unfortunate things that happened over the last 5 years is like he's been. I've heard people say that he's been abusive. He's been the abuser. Like, no, Mark Rivera was the abuser, and he's the one that victimized people. And Bishop Ruch was being charged with negligence in caring for the victims and safeguarding them after the fact. And the court says that charge was false. Or at least there wasn't enough evidence to prove it. And that's a very different thing. Like being not doing, not being, uh, not investigating or taking the right actions in the aftermath of somebody else's sin is a bad thing. You should do that. As you should do. If you're guilty of that, yes, I think you should resign at that point. Um, so it's not a light charge, but I think over the course of 5 years, it became worse. Ruck became the center of all evil in the diocese. Like it was almost like he was paired up with Mark Rivera as if they were team members in some ways, and this is not true. That's not what the case was. Um, so anyway, I think I'm thankful for the ruling, and I think it might help going forward. Um, Other court procedures, other bishops not letting themselves be um, swayed by or pushed by ACNA two into taking unjust actions, precipitous unjust actions. I mean, this is
Well,
like me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I go ahead, and then I want to talk about the um what happened is that in 2019, basically Bishop Bruck had been exonerated from third party um,
Affiliates and
investigations.
yeah,
Those findings were not shared with anyone. And basically, according to the court documents, bishops in the ACNA were pressured to sign their names to presentments that they were not familiar enough with. And uh, this sort of swirling idea that something needed to be done or bad things were happening influenced the provincial uh, offices to try to get a scalp, essentially.
that's what it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so the relationships between the bishops is something I would like to talk about. But uh, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say that the situation it looks like the ACNA two was trying to do the same sort of thing that was happening in the Southern Baptist Church. I'm sorry, convention, because guidepost was being used by at the kind of church two advocates within the Southern Baptist Church to leverage in leftist ideology, to accuse all the conservatives of being abusive or covering over abuse, and then for like a year or two, however long the Guidepost investigation went on, the church was basically run by Guidepost, which is a pro-LGBTQ organization. Now, thankfully, it turns out thanks to the discovery, a lot of the narrative that organization put forward and others in Southern Baptist Church were trying to undo the conservative resurgence. That narrative is collapsing, right? So, and I think this is kind of similar to that in my mind. That if the court ruling is accurate in all that it says, and I have no reason to believe that it's not, then the narrative from the left is going to collapse on this.
Mhm. Well, so I would like to talk about how our bishops have functioned, because I don't think that I'm grateful that Bishop Ruch was exonerated and is found not guilty based on the charges that that are there for him. But it's not good. It's not like the ACNA is full of light and beauty at this point. Uh, it sounds like Bishop Ruch in a growing diocese uh, had a lot going on and was naive, deeply naive about human evil. I've seen that kind of, um, everything's so great. Everybody's coming to Jesus. We're just, we're just planting churches. We're just doing really great. And you don't see the malign evil of people like Mark Rivera or people who will take advantage of that. And so when he stepped down, I think at the time people said, wait, why is he doing that? He could have fought this tooth and nail at that point, but he stepped down. He stepped aside, which is a very sweet Christian kind of thing to do, I think, but tactically was not good, especially when the College of Bishops is full of people who are not sweet Christians, who are kind of
Gunning for you.
So the relationships between the bishops and the ACNA seems like something that needs
Serious. It's really sad. Yeah, I totally agree. During I guess just before the trial actually started, Alan Runyon, who is on the court, I guess, resigned, and he said that the trial was going to be corrupted because a member of the trial court was asking about evidence that had been set aside and was not to be used during the course of the trial. And so he made that accusation while proceedings were going on, so the court couldn't respond, and they do respond pretty pretty assertively in the reading of the text. I'm going to just read a part of it because it's pretty interesting. Attorneys appearing before this court are not free agents seeking tactical gain. They are officers of the court, bound by fidelity to its orders, candor toward its judges, and respect for the orderly administration of justice. They may challenge or seek modification of the court's directives through recognized procedures, but they may not disregard or undermine them. When an attorney, especially one entrusted with a public quasi-criminal prosecutorial role, rejects these obligations, the injury is not confined to a single case. It strikes the very foundation of ecclesiastical justice. These principles govern the court's assessment of the conduct of the former provincial prosecutor who met Mr. Alan Runyon. Mr. Runyon accepted an office requiring diligence, impartiality, and adherence to this court's directives. Yet near the close of the prosecutor's case in chief, immediately after the province's own expert testified that no canon had been violated, Mr. Runyon abruptly abandoned his duties. He filed no motion to withdraw, offered no explanation to the court, and provided no transition of responsibilities. He simply ceased to act in the role he had been appointed to fill. His departure left the left the province, the court, and the respondent in a compromised and chaotic position. Volunteers, witnesses, and court members were forced to shoulder responsibilities he had vacated at significant cost of time, effort, and emotional labor. The integrity of the proceedings, um, the expectation that each party will responsibly prosecute and defend its case was gravely damaged. And the record offers no justification for this abdication. So just we skip down just a little bit. In addition to abandoning his responsibilities and violating the court orders, Mr. Runyon publicly complained about the questioning conducted by members of this court, an assertion he raised not during the proceedings, where he had full opportunity to object, but only afterward in an extrajudicial setting. Because these public remarks have been used to malign the integrity of this court, they must be addressed. Judges in ecclesiastical courts are not passive observers. They bear a duty to probe testimony, clarify ambiguities, and ensure a complete, reliable record. Questioning by the court is not only permissible, it is essential to the pursuit of truth. When counsel objects to a question, the canons of the ACNA provide orderly mechanisms. Objections may be raised, answers may be moved to be stricken, rulings may be sought, and when necessary, appeals may be taken to the provincial tribunal. These avenues are designed to resolve concerns within the judicial process. Mr. Runyon invoked none of them. He did not object. He did not move to strike. He did not request a ruling. He raised no contemporaneous concern that any line of inquiry exceeded the bounds of propriety or fairness. Only after abandoning his post and violating confidentiality orders did he publicly claim the court questioning had been improper, fully aware that this court, bound by its own confidentiality obligations, could not respond. I think it's pretty interesting. I don't know. They're answering charges against them from Mr. Runyon, who does. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know a lot of people who hold him in high regard and who respect him a lot. Same thing with Rachel DeBow. But they haven't. The court has not had an opportunity to give their side of the story, and now they have, which is, I think, good. It's good to have both sides out there.
But Runyon was first part of the investigating team for the province, and then was made prosecutor. So there's when they talk about that's a conflict of interest.
I'm not sure that the provincial investigation team. I'm kind of cloudy about that. I thought, the board of inquiry under the older canons for Title IV, it can investigate things, but it doesn't have it. I think its purview is to decide if these charges are true. Would it constitute an offense that would lead to discipline? I think that's what the board of inquiry is supposed to decide. They can ask questions, they can investigate and all that kind of thing. But if they're on the face of it, they look at the charges and they say, well, okay, if there's evidence here, we don't know how good or bad it is, but there is evidence here that if substantiated, this would should be a canonical violation requiring discipline. So we need to send it forward to trial, because the assumption is that the trial court is the one that does all the investigating. So I think that part is right with Runyon, that the trial court does have the obligation to chase down as many avenues as they can to figure out what's actually happened. The trial court under our canons is an investigatory body, from my understanding. It's not just hearing evidence. It actually is doing investigating. So I'm not sure what the provincial investigation team was. I don't understand how that was. That extrajudicial? Was that?
Well, that seems like the implication that there were different things going on.
Yeah.
Different people were doing, and so when people were being interviewed, they didn't always know who it was. Was it Helios? Right. Was it Pitt? Was it the BOI? Like, it sounds like sheer and total chaos. I mean, if anybody comes out looking guilty, it's the ACNA as a whole, and its ability to deal with sin in the camp, as it were.
Well, the sad thing too is like the victims, the Mark Revere's victims. Like, for 5 years, they've been. I mean, it's been horrible for them, I'm sure, and I can't. This is why this kind of thing needs to be reformed in a big way, because there are people who are really truly hurt and devastated by the actions of this guy, and the church needs to be able to care for them and do justice um, without having a 5-year horror story
You
go,
know,
go on.
so I would also like to talk about, I mean, I saw this online and I don't think people that I generally don't agree with, but I don't think it's a bad thing to bring up. It basically says at the end, mistakes were made in the Diocese of the Upper Midwest. And when you do get this sort of smaller section about the various, it's not just Mark Rivera, there were other
Yeah,
big issues, and there were people who went forward for ordination,
who shouldn't
um,
have.
who shouldn't have been, who shouldn't have gone forward, and they exonerate Bishop Ruck, which I, based on the 70 pages that I've read, I think is fair. That said, mistakes were made in a diocese with a spiritual head. That spiritual head is responsible for those mistakes that were made. So he
Yeah,
doesn't have to be tried and convicted, but he's the captain of the boat. And the boat, if it's sinking, it's not Shlomo that's at fault, or not, if not Shlomo is at fault, it's
the captain's response.
the captain who's responsible.
So if you don't know the analogy I use when I'm talking about this with our church is that Shlomo, the engine boy,
I know. I feel like that's you probably
throwing a wrench into the engine of the causing the boat to break or to run aground or whatever. It's Shlomo's fault, but the captain has to take responsibility for it. He may well lose his
the
he should offer his resignation, and the Navy.
boat goes down into the water, and the captain is the one who dies in that
Right,
situation.
right. Or if he doesn't go down in the water, he has to offer his resignation, and the Navy can decide whether or not to take that up. But the same thing, when our kids, when they were little, did something wrong, we had to say we're sorry to other people. When they're adults, when they do something wrong, if they're in our, not adults, young adults in our house, if they do something wrong, I'm responsible for that, even though I didn't do it. So I have to say I'm sorry. I can't resign as their father, but I can, but I have to say, yeah, I'll take responsibility for what my kids did. Um, and I think that's a principle that I think should be in play here. I'm not sure what that would mean for him. I mean, because even though I think that if this document is correct, then I think he is not guilty because if there's not enough proof to prove a guy guilty, you can't make him guilty. That's just basic legal stuff. However, like you say, there were definitely some things that were happening that are his responsibility. That maybe he should offer his resignation, and now maybe he should take this as vindication, which it is for him, and say, okay, well, I've been vindicated, but I think my time as bishop is over. I'm gonna call for an election and step down and let somebody else take the reins for right now. I think that'd be really gracious. I think that'd be really humble, and I think that'd be a helpful thing for the diocese and the ACNA. Now, again, I don't know. I'm not in that diocese. Maybe people who are in the diocese think completely differently. That's fine, but I think there's some responsibility that needs to be taken for what happened.
I I, I think that would further undermine the already great blow that's being dealt to quote advocacy groups like ACNA2, which I cannot say this in stronger terms. ACNA2 should not have anything to say about anything. You should not be you cannot call yourself a victim's advocate if you are a proponent and advocate of the LGBTQ
Right.
acronym. That those two things do not go together in the ACNA. So there should, if you want to be ACNA, an advocate for victims, which is a perfectly reasonable and fine thing to be, you have to have orthodox uh, beliefs on sexuality. You can't undermine the Bible, smear people who believe in the Bible, slander them, continually undermine the scriptures and the beliefs of the church, and then try to be an advocate for any
Right.
person.
And the standard for whether accusations it should be a biblical standard, right? So it's not a person made an accusation, therefore the person is guilty. He's been accused. I mean, that's not how justice works in the Bible. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I know that sometimes they'll give a statistic like a woman never lies about these things. She's 85% of the time or 95% of the time she's telling the truth. But I'm not disputing the statistics, but I am saying it's not relevant to process. The process is one that is given to us in the Bible because it is true that there are occasions where people who claim to be abused haven't been abused. And we know that from the Bible.
It might be super rare.
Right, right. But still, it's that rare chance needs to be investigated, right? So you need to assume evidence, assume innocence until it's proven otherwise. I mean, we have a great example of this with Joseph and Potiphar's wife. I'm sorry, that was she made the accusation, and if Potiphar believed all women and sent him to prison, but I mean, that can't be the way that we do things. Mm-hmm.
It isn't good for the victims of abuse. Like it isn't a protection for them.
Right.
It isn't a grace to them to say
we're just
gonna. It actually takes it very seriously when you do an investigation.
There's a distinction between pastoral care and legal stuff. Like if someone comes to you and says that this happened to me, adjudicate that, right? You don't say, "Oh, let's look at the evidence you provide." No, you say, "Oh, you tell me about it. Let me hear you." And if if the accusation involves something that's reportable, call the police immediately.
Yeah, that's what
and let them do the
say Bishop Ruch did.
Right.
He did the thing he was supposed to do, and he took it seriously.
Right.
And that's why he's not guilty of negligence in this regard.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I think I'm going to be saying it in almost every live stream from here on, which is ACNA2 delanda est. Like ACNA2 must go away in a very nice way. Go to another church. Don't bring non-Christian principles to bear in a Christian organization. And having said that, I think it would be very, very good for the bishops of our church to similarly begin to behave in a very Christian way. And as I was reading, I thought about the history of Good Shepherd. We've been here for 23 years. When we came to this church, you wouldn't call it a Christian body. There might have been one or two believers who had put their faith in Jesus Christ when we first got here. But by and large, the people who were in that original congregation came to one of two things happened to them. They either became Christians, they were saved, they trusted in Jesus through the preaching of God's word, or they left the church because the church was becoming Christian. It took Good Shepherd 15 years to feel like a Christian body. So I can understand when you look at the ACNA, we all left the Episcopal Church. It might not feel like a Christian body initially. Yeah. It's taken a long time, but we're 16 years in. It's time for the bishops of our church to begin behaving and becoming deeply, deeply, deeply Christian in their instincts. Meaning they don't have it out for each other. They don't have the kind of rivalries that appear in this document. They don't practice unbiblical, quote, justice. They are very firm about ordination vows and people coming into the process to be ordained. They don't play ugly politics with each other and try to get what they want in a controlling and ungodly fashion. They become deeply, deeply faithful Christians who, when you talk to them, their Christianity emanates out of them, and you are in awe of the depth of their faith and biblical knowledge. That is true for some bishops in the ACNA, but it should be true for every single bishop in the ACNA.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is the and I think ACNA too. You read their stuff. They're always talking about how terrible it is. It's gone on. This has gone on so long. It is terrible. It's gone on so long. But part of the reason it's gone on so long is because of ACNA too, because they've gotten into the process. They've pressured bishops. Bishops have been
bowed to the pressure
and not and push forward their advocacy claims rather than thinking about how this could be justly adjudicated. And that's what needs to change. I mean, we need to be impervious um, uh, to injustice on either side of the question, as bishops. So
You shouldn't, in a room full of bishops, be able to feel or under or apprehend that some of them hate each other.
I mean, I don't know how you stop that, because it's gonna. I mean, that happens in a church. That happens in. I mean, that people are just gonna be people, and sinners are gonna be sinners. But I do think it just the rivalries, like you say. I mean, the stories I hear coming out of the conclaves, which I'm not gonna tell, but I hear are just like the same thing. It's like, oh my goodness, this is more like uh, a political party than a where it should be. So,
And
um,
it's not enough to say we prayed and we're all good now.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody prays, but you know,
yeah. Well, maybe, yeah. Maybe this ruling will be something that begins changing the way people do things.
yeah. Okay,
Um,
I have another thing I want to complain about or say, and that's that uh, I think that that advocacy groups like ACNA misunderstand this, and this is so crucial for every single Christian to grapple with. And it's what separates us from the world. It is a matter of, of, of justice and mercy also. But it was really interesting to read the whole history of Bishop Ruch in the diocese and how it unfolded. The baseline of our life together is that we are sinners. Like sin is a real thing. It exists in the heart of every human person. Sin is why we are here in the church trying to be mended and put back together. It cannot be the case that there are some good people who are on the right side of something and some bad people who are on the wrong side of things. We corporately are sinners who are being helped in towards God. And the job of the pastor or the bishop is to minister and uh, take care of people who are dying. That this other paradigm of how that there are abusers and victims and you have to is not how this goes down.
there are
It's not
both.
Christian.
There are abusers and victims, but the whole world isn't divided along those lines, right?
Right.
Is that what you mean? Yeah. Um,
So
so,
the pastor can offer care to the person who has been abused and to the person who abused that person. He can go to he can be with the person who was abused, and then he can go to the trial of the person who abused
all right,
and preach the gospel
to both
to
people.
that person.
Yeah.
And he has to be allowed to go back and forth between different kinds of people and offer different kinds of care, different messages.
Right.
And if you take that away, if you take out the category of sin and replace it with one single thing, abuse or whatever, you cause the organization no longer to be a Christian thing and the leaders to be able to act as Christ representatives.
James Gibson says we have to give him something is not a sufficient rationale to move forward with the presentment. Yeah, that that's when that seems like what was happening. Like we've got, there's so much public pressure. We've got to throw them. We've got to throw the virgin into the volcano, um, to appease the gods of advocacy. And Bishop Brock was going to be the person thrown in. I mean, I sounds like anyway. Um, so um, it's a pretty. I understand the other side of that too. Like I can understand hearing the accusations um, from ACNA two and others and saying, well, uh, we've got to do something to we got to we've got to appear like we're doing something. And when you really, it's not much to do. You got to wait for the process to work itself out. Um, but I do have sympathy for the pressure that people are under. You don't want to. You do how you actually have genuine concern for the people who've been hurt, the actual victims, and you're really conscious of not wanting to look like you're callous, which people can interpret you as being callous if you don't take the action they want you to take. If you don't say the words they want you to say, the conclusion they'll draw and tell others about is you're callous, you're cold, you don't care about victims, all that. And nobody wants to be in that position and in the church.
It's just, here's the thing. Everybody needs to read Failure of Nerve
Yeah,
and Generation to Generation, because if you're the head of an organization,
you can't
then
do that.
people
Yeah.
are not going to understand what you're doing. You
Right.
have to be connected and yet differentiated enough that that pressure that is
You're
applied to
not
you.
that dictated by what you think others are going to think.
No,
I mean,
you you have to do the correct and right thing and be pastorally there for people and take care of them and yet do the thing which is the call of God to do.
yeah, yes.
I can't believe I have to say that out loud, but there we are. So,
We should probably
uh,
head off.
yeah, we have to go to Planet Fitness and uh, walk in the snow and other kinds of things. So, I thank you for coming to this extra special, super live stream. And this is the post for the day. It'll go up in a little bit for those who missed it. And I will write something for tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Bye.